The views expressed on the Nova Society are those of the panelists and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Phoenix Research Institute or any institution which any panel member is associated. Welcome back to the Nova Society, a space where dialogue deepens understanding and civic responsibility comes to life. I'm Dr. Mark Bound, joined by our regular panel, Dr. Scott Gershwer and Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon. Together, we'll unpack the stories that matter most, exploring the headlines, the history, and the big ideas shaping today's conversations. Let's dive in and hear what the panel has for us today.
Today we have a question from Thomas, who writes to us from Bridgeport, Rhode Island. I didn't know there was a Bridgeport in Rhode Island.
I didn't either.
No, At one point I lived there in both Providence and Warwick and I lived in West Warwick. I didn't know there was a Bridgeport. Well, Thomas writes, Trump is back from his China trip, and as expected, he is touting his great success. I did note that this week, President Putin visited China. Not only did he also get the red carpet treatment, but Xi personally showed up to welcome him, unlike when Trump arrived. For me, that spoke volumes. From what we've been told, Trump was ambiguous regarding Taiwan and didn't really accomplish much. On one of your previous episodes, the panel was thinking that we need to keep an eye on the CEOs and the moves they make before we can start to understand what really went on in the talks. I did see where China will buy 200 aircraft from Boing and a deal that includes a reduction to U.S. tariffs on Chinese goods and a pause to Beijing's restrictions on exports of rare earth minerals and magnets. What is the panel's take on the Trump-China visit, and have you seen any CEO moves that might be of interest? Now, these are great questions. Thomas, I don't. I had thought there was supposedly a beef deal where the American farmers were going to be able to send some beef to China, but
I think that was a joke. Don't you guys think that was a joke? Because we have a beef shortage, and the Chinese say, "Hey, you know what? We'll take some of your beef," and we have a beef shortage here. I mean, beef. I don't know if you know this, Brooke. I don't know. You don't seem like a big steak eater, but like the price of meat.
I don't eat meat.
Yeah, it's really, really high.
Oh God, it's stupid. We went out and got a couple of nice New York strips the other day, and they were like $16.99 a pound.
Yeah,
it was absolutely. Oh, and just for your information, Brooke, there is a Bridgeport, Rhode Island. It is a small, historic, and largely residential fishing village located in the town of Tiverton, Rhode Island. Oh. So there you have it. So it does. It is there. So Thomas lives in a little fishing village, which looks very quaint by the pictures I'm looking at. Anyway.
Oh, nice.
Okay, yeah. Tiverton I have heard of. Okay, but not Bridgeport. Oh, interesting. Thank you. Go ahead. So, yeah, I don't know, but I did also hear that there was supposed to be 200 aircraft instead of 500 that Trump had been talking about. And Trump also said something about 750 or 725 aircraft engines, which doesn't make any sense.
By the end of the day, it'll be like several thousand. You know, it's just the hype. You know, it's just that everything gets multiplied by either doubled or multiplied by like 3 or 4. The idea there was that, they went over there and Trump brought the CEO of Boeing, who apparently didn't meet with Xi. Apparently none of the CEOs that he dragged over there actually got to join in a meeting with Xi. And the upshot is that they agreed to buy 200, which is a fraction of what Trump had been touting. It's a good deal. It's a lot of money, but it's not what they were hoping for. And in addition, there is apparently a commitment to buy $17 billion of U.S. agricultural products through the next couple of years, which is way down from where it was when Biden was president. I believe it was up to like $25 billion a year when Biden was president. So Biden was really good, I think, to the farmers, and you can check me on this because I don't think I'm wrong about that. And Trump has been awful for them in both terms, and yet they voted for him for this term. I mean, if I was a farmer, I think I probably would have said after the first term, "Hey, there's no way we're returning you to office because this is just ridiculous. You've cut off our markets, and you've given the Brazilians and the Australians a great opportunity to sell their agricultural goods to China." And if you think about like where Brazil is, I mean, they're chopping down the rainforest there as quickly as they possibly can to develop more farmland, and they're putting, hundreds of thousands of cattle in their herd, like almost daily. So they're really expanding their agricultural sector, and now they have a great buyer for it, while American farmers are suffering from high diesel costs and other equipment. You can't even get some supplies because the supply chain is broken. Aluminum and steel are way up, and they're suffering terribly. Bankruptcies up like 46%, I think I read. And so, the American farmers are not doing well. American businesses are not doing all that well. If it wasn't for AI, I don't think the stock market would be any kind of good. And Trump basically came home empty-handed from this trip.
Yeah. And the important thing is $17 billion over the next few years. So that's spread out. So yeah, $17 billion sounds like a really nice big boon. Again, it is less than what Biden had per year. So don't get focused on that $17 billion, because again, it's over a few years. It's just showing that Trump is so bad at negotiating that even with our agricultural might, which we have quite a bit here in the United States, he's getting his ass handed to him. I mean, it's plain and simple. And then he touts it as some big deal. And Scott's right. At some point in time, the numbers are going to go up. Just sort of like 2 weeks always turns out to be a lot longer than 2 weeks, if ever. Whether or not we will see any of this is really up up for grabs at this point in time. The CEOs did not get to participate, as Scott said. That is a fact. And so our comment of we've got to watch those CEOs and what they do, they're going to be guessing just as much as everybody else at this point in time. And it is very strange that the head of Boeing was there and he didn't meet with the Chinese. And the Chinese are talking about 200 planes, which is less than expected, and some parts that they need. And their concession is precious metals. But there's no real definitive amount that we're talking about when we're talking about precious metals. So the only good thing out of all this is probably the idea that the tariffs are, the tariff war that's going back and forth has been continued to be on pause or has been reduced a little bit. But beyond that, I don't see that we accomplished a whole heck of a lot when it comes to this negotiation supposedly that happens with the Chinese. It was mentioned that Trump kind of did waffle a little bit when it came to Taiwan, not being real committal. And so we're going to have to really keep an eye on that to see, where that ends up when it's all said and done. I don't think it was an opening, but like we've talked about before, it is a matter of, it just takes a wink and a nod with China when it comes to Taiwan. All they have to know is, yeah, okay, fine. We can do this. So, yeah.
And they got a lot more than that, actually. Because
yes.
Trump made a statement, I believe it was on the airplane on the way back, or it might have been during the conversation that he had with one of two Fox hosts that he talked to, Brett Baier or Sean Hannity, where he said he's really into Taiwan for the chips, but he doesn't want them to be independent. He doesn't want them to declare independence. I'm not into independence, he said. Well, Taiwan's been independent since 1949.
That's an interesting comment from an American president.
Yeah, I mean, just right, the level of historical knowledge not too hot, but I mean, I think that tells you everything he needs to know. And as we discussed a week or so ago, I don't know that the Chinese need to invade Taiwan. All they need to do is do to Taiwan what the Russians have done to us in undermining their confidence in their system, supporting opposition groups who are leaning more towards China than independence, and slowly working their way in so that Taiwan agrees to join China at some point rather than remaining independent. And we see the propaganda working here. It hasn't worked yet in Ukraine, although man, it's amazing. I was on, I forget where it was, Threads or Reddit or something like that, and there was a thing about Ukraine, and we've gotten to a point where you can't trust anything you're seeing anymore. So I watched this video of a drone flying into a building in Moscow, and I was like, I wonder if that really happened. But one of the comments below was, Zelensky's a Nazi and the Ukrainians are Nazis, and we need to do everything we can to wipe Ukraine off the map. And it was, supposedly by some American. And man, the propaganda works. You got to give them that. Propaganda works. There are people who probably aren't willing to check things out, who really just believe what they're told. If it sounds good enough to them, they'll believe it. And that was an example. So I don't have a great feeling after this trip that Taiwan's going to remain independent for long. But I also I don't think that China is going to make the same mistake that we've made in Iran and that Russia made in Ukraine and we made in Korea way back when, and Vietnam and Afghanistan, and getting into a war over something that they probably can win from other means, right? War is politics by other means. Yeah.
Yeah. And my one question, as far as the restrictions, the pause on Beijing's restrictions for certain exports, rare earth minerals, and of course magnets. And my question is, have they convinced Trump that water does not destroy magnets? I don't know, because he's an idiot and believes that water takes magnetism and makes it all go away. Very interesting there. Brooke.
Yeah.
Yeah. I almost didn't Trump say that Taiwan has stolen our chips manufacturing businesses?
Yes. He has said
very
that,
much.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
anybody
who does business without cutting us in is apparently stealing from us.
When the reality is we gave it to them.
Right.
We had the capacity to do it. We just, because of expediency and because of cost, basically gave it to them. I mean, when you go buy your computers, all of us are on a computer right now. If all those chips and things were made in the United States, your computers would be more expensive because the labor for an American manufacturer would be higher than it is for somebody in Taiwan. So, yeah. I mean, so you've got your little Lenovo's and you've got your Dells and you've got your this, that, and the other. And the fact is they would be more expensive if the components that we rely on from Taiwan were manufactured here in the United States. That's simple economics. And, people can say, oh, no, that's not right. Well, it is right. They're paying their people basically far less than what we pay, which takes the shipping costs and makes them almost, not even relevant to this, because you're going to pay a chip manufacturer here in the United States $20-$25 an hour. It's going to be more expensive, plain and simple, and that's really all there is to it. I did note, and Thomas did bring up, that President Putin visited China, and there was one difference. Everybody says, "Wow, they basically did the same thing for Putin that they did for Trump." But the fact is that Xi actually met Putin at the airport. Trump got, the B team. So I think that was a bit of a slight, if not a lot of a slight.
Yeah, I don't think it was a bit of a slight. Yeah,
maybe a lot of a slight.
Yeah, and just the meetings being like, less than a week apart.
Yeah,
it kind of sends that signal really clearly.
Yeah.
So I don't think. If I was Trump, I know he talks a big game and stuff like that, but I would be feeling really low right now about that whole thing and about the situation he's gotten himself into. And I'm sure there's he's throwing shit at the walls and there's ketchup dripping down the walls in the Oval Office, and he's not in a really good mood right now because there's pretty much everything that he's touching is going to shit. But of course, he himself is doing very, very well, and we'll talk about that later. But there's just one more point I wanted to make, which is that, there are organizations, Business Roundtable, the Chief Executive Leadership Institute, and the Leadership Now Project. There are organizations that CEOs who have very, very different interests, right, in their fields, are coming together, have come together for a long time in those organizations, but try to affect policy and really may emerge as the best check on Trump and the stupidity of some of his policies. I mean, I can't imagine that CEOs are happy about first of all, about the basic chaos, right? Of the, Trump thrives in chaos, loves creating chaos, loves to keep people guessing. That's the last thing on earth a C-level executive wants. I remember when I was working for Pitney Bowes, our CEO had an interview with the Wall Street Journal, and I went into his office to help work through it. I gave him a briefing document. We sat and discussed it for a couple of minutes, and the Wall Street Journal guy called, and his first questions was, I think, about Sarbanes-Oxley, which was a rule that CEOs were very unhappy with. It was a big check on their abilities to run their businesses by the government, and it came from like Enron and some other bad stuff. And he handled it. This is Mike Critelli, who was the CEO at the time, handled it really, really smoothly, I thought. He said, "Look, I can handle anything you throw at me, but I have to know it's coming, and I have to know that it's going to stay for a while, because a ship this big doesn't turn that quickly." But I thought his answer was tremendous. And they want stability.
Yep.
These business leaders. And the fact that he brought business leaders with him, he didn't bring farmers, he didn't bring coal miners, right? He brought business leaders with him, and he's hired a lot of business leaders to be in his administration. These are probably going to be the only people that he's willing to listen to make changes in his policies that we all need him to make. Now, they'll concentrate on policies that are pro-business. So, it may be anti-consumer, it may be anti-environment, it may be anti-worker, right? There may be a lot of stuff that we don't like that they're doing, but if they're assailing him on the chaos and the instability, that may be enough to stop him from doing some of the crazy stuff that he's been doing. And so, when we talk about who's coming to save us, well, we know it's not Congress. We know it's not the courts. I mean, the courts, yes. The Supreme Court, no. There's the Democrats are powerless. The Republicans are fearful and only getting more fearful after the last night's elections and the dismissal of Massey, right, in Kentucky, and John Cornyn not getting Trump's endorsement, right? So the Republicans are going to be running scared, and Trump still has that hold on the Republican Party that he's had, bizarrely enough. But hey, maybe the people who are coming to save us are the capitalists. Maybe it's going to be the CEOs, and that would be an interesting thing to happen. I'm not sure that I'm 100% sure that it's going to benefit what they call everyday Americans, ordinary Americans. But I do think that they could provide something of a check on his craziest desires and policies.
Yeah, you're right. CEOs want stability. That's very important to them because they can work in an environment where there's some stability. And as you say, Scott, where they know what's coming down the line, how long it's going to last, and they can figure out the impact it's going to have on their industry. There's no doubt about that. I think the comment of Trump's probably, throwing stuff at the wall, that kind of suggests a level of self-awareness, which I don't think that he has. I think that he truly believes in his own mind that what comes out of his pie hole is exactly the way it is. So maybe he's got that much self-awareness. I'm just not so sure. And yes, the thing that, and before we got started here, before you came on, Scott, we were talking about the primaries, and the fact is that fortunately we could say that Massey got booted out by Republicans. Now, how that'll translate to the general election when when they have a Democratic candidate, now we're going to see if there's going to be some change there.
In Kentucky?
Who knows? They've got a Democrat. They've got a Democrat as a governor. I mean, so hey, there's always a possibility. But the fact is that we can read a lot into it. Yes, he has a great hold on the Republican Party. There's no doubt about it. But the question is what kind of hold does he have on those independents, which are the ones that actually got him elected in 2024? And they seem to be absolutely turning against him in droves. So there is some true hope there. Now, the idea of we're going to rely on the capitalists to save us, that might work in the beginning, but I can't see a very good long-term end to that, because once you give the capitalists that kind of power and that ability to manipulate the economy to their own advantage, which is exactly what they're going to do. That's what they're mandated to do as CEOs, manipulate it to their own advantage. We'll see how in the long term that would impact not only the country, but as you say, the environment. And there's so many different things that would come into play when we talk about capitalists making policy decisions. Because again, they are beholden to one thing: stockholders. And that's all that they're going to really care about at that point. Now, there might be a few benefits to the average American, but I don't see there being a whole heck of a lot of advantages when it comes to that. So I think we hit that one.
Well, as far as Trump's being self-aware, when asked, I think, about voters who are upset about the prices that they're paying and so on, his response is, well, it's just going to be for a short time, and then prices are going to come down. And of course, he doesn't say anything about what people who can't afford gas and rent and food and utilities are supposed to do now. This was, I think, in response to his comment that he doesn't think about the American people's financial situation. Oh, it's just for a short time, and then prices will come way down. And that's always his answer. So he really doesn't care. Whatever he says now and whatever he thinks and whatever he wants is what everybody else is just supposed to bow and genuflect to and accept. He has no answers for what people who are in desperation now are supposed to do now. So I think that he's not self-aware as far as what other people need, because as far as he's concerned, other people are merely objects. That's part of his personality disorder. The only person who is really real is he himself. So I believe we've answered Thomas's questions.
Absolutely.
I hope. Alrighty.
And that's all the time we have for today's episode. The Nova Society is a production of Nova Society Media, a division of the Phoenix Research Institute. We want to thank our production partners, Buzzsprout, who hosts the Nova Society, Audacity, our editing team, Apple Podcasts, the largest source of podcast and music online, Spotify, the most popular platform for the Nova Society, and iHeartRadio, your destination for all things music and podcasting. The Nova Society is available on all of these and other quality platforms listed in our description. And most importantly, we want to thank you, our listeners. Without your support, the Nova Society could not be possible. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing on the platform of your choice. It's easy, it's free, and helps our channel grow. For questions or comments, you can reach us at nova.society.podcast@gmail.com. So on behalf of Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, Dr. Scott Gershworth, and all of our production partners here at the Nova Society, I'm Dr. Mark Bound. Remember, the true power of society is knowledge. Thank you for listening, and we hope to see you again next time.
Hi, everyone. This is JJ, the co-founder of Good Pods. If you haven't heard of it yet, Good Pods is like Goodreads or Instagram, but for podcasts. It's new, it's social, it's different, and it's growing really fast. There are more than 2 million podcasts, and we know that it is impossible to figure out what to listen to. On Good Pods, you follow your friends and podcasters to see what they like. That is the #1 way to discover new shows and episodes. You can find Good Pods on the web or download the app. Happy listening!